Welcome to everyone who is going to be joining this webinar that we're having today, our KINS virtual mission to Israel. I am indebted to all of the people who will be participating today, and especially to Rav Doron Perez, who is now with us, who is the executive chairman of the World Mizrahi Movement, a position he's held since 2014, and a position which he has created himself as a central figure within world Jewry. Mizrahi today, because of Rav Perez, has returned to glory, and he's been able to transform and invigorate the global religious Zionist movement. Rav Perez is not only a spokesman for so many of the things we believe in and we cherish, but unfortunately, at the beginning of this war, Rav Perez's son, Yonatan, was wounded on October 7th. He since has become a Chatan. He was able to walk down the aisle the following week, escorted by Rav Doron and his wife Shelley. And his other son, Daniel, was tragically kidnapped from his tank and is being held hostage today in Gaza. Rav Perez, the floor is yours. Please bring us to our mission.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Matenki, and welcome to all of you on Thanksgiving in the United States, to really join all of us here in Israel together, to stand together, and to shoulder by shoulder, shoulder to shoulder, to deal with all the tremendous challenges that we are facing as a Jewish people in general, of course, the state of Israel in particular. It's a zchut for me always to do anything with Rabbi Matenki, who himself, as you all know, both in the global stage in Israel and the World Zionist Organization and our World Mizrahi Board, but also, of course, throughout, not only Chicago, but throughout the United States, many leadership roles that he has played and continues to play. And it's a zchut to be hosted by Rav Lenny and for all of you at KINS for this virtual mission. It's also a zchut to be together with Michal for the tragic loss of her brother and nephew, Moshe and Eliad, Chayuns and Ofakim, Rabbi Yechiel Leiter, for the hosted in South Africa for the tragic loss of his son, Officer Moshe, and my friend Rabbi Ben Menorah, who is a graduate of our programs, of many of our Mizrahi leadership programs, and currently working with JLRC in Binghamton. Shkach to you, Rav Ben, for returning to Israel. And for along with, I just want to say what Rav Ben did is amazing, and has returned and left family and come to be in the army, which is really incredible. Shakar to you, Rav Ben, and Hashem should just look after you, and you should just be well amongst all the other soldiers. Rav Ben returned to Israel with 300,000 others. Mikam Cha Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Yeah, our family is going through a very difficult time, as are families of the 230-something hostages. As you know, that's going to come down by around 50 in the coming days, and along with 1,200 others, Rahman Litzan, who've been killed, and families mourning. And there isn't a household in Israel that there isn't a soldier, a son, a brother, a sibling, father, family member who has been called up, and therefore many lone soldiers, where we are really all in this together. And I think, Rabbi Menorah came back to fight as one of 300,000 Israelis who came back. Normally, with normal nations, a war zone is a place where people flee from. We know that no airline is flying to Israel, understandably, but El Al has brought back 300,000 people in the last number of weeks, because we are not a regular people. We're a people where the time of difficulty and a time of challenge, not only do people not run away, but they run towards. They come back to defend our home, to defend their home, to defend your home, to defend the Jewish homeland. And it's just an unbelievable thing. I think that at the end of the day, Hamas came to, there's a Hebrew word to annihilate called lechasel. They came lechasel, they came to annihilate, they came to maim, they came to hurt, they came to kill. We know all the horrific things that they have done. But ultimately what they've really done to us as a people is another Hebrew word you may not know, called lechashel, with a shin. They've strengthened us. Lechashel in Hebrew means to strengthen. Boy, oh boy, have they misread this situation. They, as Nasrallah Yamach Shemo and Yahya Sinwar Yamach Shemam, follow Israeli news very, very carefully. They're keen students of Israeli society. They especially Nasrallah, who's fluent in Hebrew and has written about and tweeted about the fact that this is the end of Israel, and we weak and we arguing within. And he totally, and Hamas totally misread who we are. You see, on the outside, we are a disunited, geographically dispersed, and argumentative people. As Haman said, Rav Kook has said about that famous verse of Haman, the archetypical anti-Semite of Amalek, who comes to, as we all know, who comes to Achashverosh and says to him, Yesh no amichad, there's this one people, Mefuzarim Furad, they are totally dispersed. In fact, there is no dispersed people. He said they're in every one of your 127 countries. Show me a people dispersed to every corner of the world. It doesn't exist. And they are mefurad. They are separated from each other. They're like Peyrud. They're not only geographically dispersed, they are argumentative. They are confrontational with each other, and they're incredibly ideologically diverse. Says Rav Kook, the miracle and mystery of the Jewish people is that on the outside, we seem, chitzoniot, yeah, on the outside, we seem to be more dispersed than any other people, more varied and diverse than any other people. That is true on the outside. But on the inside, when you look to its soul, ha'adam yireh la'enaim, people see only what the eye externally sees. V'Hashem yireh la'levav, as Hashem said to Shmuel in the choosing of David, who Shmuel wasn't quite, didn't think that this young ginger shepherd was going to be the one, as opposed to the other stronger and more fit seeming brothers of David. And Hashem says to him, no, the human being sees what the eye sees, and that is only physical things. And even with telescopes and microscopes, we can only see physical things. We cannot see what the eye cannot see. But Hashem yireh lalevav, God can see deeper into the heart, into the soul. And when you look at the heart and soul of the Jewish people, what do you see? A people unified, one people. And that's a dichotomy. They seem externally so diverse, but really we are one people. And at times of pain and of difficulty and of challenge, we reveal the essence of who we are. We hope and pray that this should not have to happen through so much pain and through so much difficulty and so much suffering that many of us are going through. And we're all in this together. But really what reveals what happens when challenge happens is that we truly see who the Jewish people are. We are an unparalleled people like no other, who has come out in the most incredible way to be united like no other people. No people values life the way the Jewish people do against an enemy who has absolute disregard for life, not the lives of their enemies and not the lives of their own. They have no care and concern for their own, because such is the nature of hate and such is the nature of destruction. And we are part of a people who, it's a people which cares for our lives, cares for the lives of everyone, and only does what it has to do to defend itself, and will do anything this our army will do, unified in such a way to bring back Bezrat Hashem every single hostage, to be able to look after the lives of our soldiers who are going out to fight and to uproot the evil of Hamas until it, like a cancerous Nazi type regime, where the German society could only begin to heal after Nazism was eradicated as a regime from Germany and Europe, so too will Bezrat Hashem Hamas be eradicated as a cancerous, horrific, Nazi-like destructive organization. And what they did, they came to annihilate, they came to destroy. But all they really have done is galvanize the Jewish people in a way that we've craved. Again, it's such a pity it's happened through such pain and difficulty. And they brought us together. And I've always believed that the great Iron Dome spiritually of the Jewish people is our unity, our togetherness. And when we stand together, when we get brought together, there is no force on earth like this. 300,000 people returning, left to right in Israel, religious and irreligious, everybody coming together as one. At Mizrahi alone, World Mizrahi, we have 4 solidarity groups this week and another 4 or 5 next week, and 30 to 35 missions over the coming weeks. And amongst so many different missions, the Jewish people stand together. The Jewish people stand together as one. And what this has done after the very difficult and very divisive last 4 to 5 years of the almost unparalleled 5 election rounds in 4 years, and then that was only a light warm-up for what we've had this last year. And we were on this collision course, and we weren't quite sure how we were going to restore unity in Israel. And on Simchat Torah, we got the answer, a painful one, a horrific price to pay, of so many families who've lost, and so many of our hostage families which are suffering through this, and so many soldiers' families in every single area of every single family facing these enormous challenges. But we have come together, and we will prevail. So, Rabbi Matenki, I saw a message from you, which tell me what you'd like me to address, sir. I'm just going to ask you that you wanted me to address something.
Well, Daron, we are all wondering, your family has had both extraordinary simcha, the joy of the wedding, and extraordinary challenge with still your son being held as a hostage. Is there any news? Is there anything that the government is sharing with you about his situation, about the situation of the other hostages?
The answer is yes and no. We do not know where our son is and what his fate is. We hope and pray, of course, that he's alive and well, and that if he was in the battle, when he was removed from his tank, one member of his tank was killed, and the other 3 were taken hostage. We don't know what his situation is. We have not. We assume, as the army assumes, that he's alive and well, B'ezrat Hashem, but we don't know. He's also one of those people where there hasn't been, there's 2 types of hostages in terms of the definition. One, where we know for sure that they are hostage because we have evidence, eyewitness accounts, videos, and the others, like my son and the members of his tank, the other 2 members of his tank, where there's no video footage, no camera footage, no eyewitness reports. So it's all based on circumstantial evidence where a number of officers of Modi'in have sat with us to show us how they reached the conclusion he was missing for 3 weeks. And then since then, why they changed his status to hostage to presumed taken hostage. There's enough circumstantial evidence. It's not 100%, but it's strong enough to change the definition. They haven't shared that with us. They shared with us how they reached the conclusion regarding him, but they haven't, spoken. We know nothing further than that. I was called by the army liaison. Every family has an army liaison who called today. To the moment he told us how many hostages are going to be released today, and women and children. And as soon as the government knows, they inform us personally straight away, because obviously we're part of this family of hostages, but we don't know beyond that. So regarding his fate, we don't know. And if I can ask everybody, please, to continue to pray for Daniel Shimon Ben Sharon, our son, who is an officer in tanks and is a presumed hostage in Gaza. And obviously the whole prisoner swap, the swap for hostages and prisoners, but also the giving respite to Hamas and only some of the hostages is a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's incredible that we are redeeming Pidyon Shvuim, and many people, especially young children, people who are not well, many women will be returned, please God, in the coming days to their families. So it's a tremendous simcha, Pidyon Shvuim. But of course, there are many still like our son, where there's a long way to go. And obviously 4 days of time to regroup is not encouraging. But there is a mitveh, an arrangement, and hopefully for the future to release more. And we hope and pray. And I'll end with this, that with the tremendous achdut that we have at the moment, the tremendous gvura that we have at the moment, the incredible acts of self-sacrifice of all of our families and soldiers all together, that very speedily all of the hostages will return in good health very soon. Hashem will look after that. All those have fallen. There should be no more who fall going forward. Should give tremendous comfort to the families, the family of Michal, of course, of my friend Dr. Yechiel, Dr. Lata, and Nechamot and Yeshua to all the families, and of course to look after and protect every single one of our soldiers going forward. And Bezrat Hashem, with all the pain and difficulty, this darkness will usher in a new period of redemption for the Jewish people, with more understanding, more unity, and usher in, please God, a new chapter in the history of our people as we move together, Jewish and human history forward.
Amen. Rev. Perez, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today and joining us today as well. I am thankful for your leadership, for your friendship, and most importantly, for the inspiration that you're giving to all of us. And now I'm going to be passing the baton over to a former Chicagoan, to a graduate of one of your programs, and that is specifically to Ben Menorah. Ben was born in Chicago. Many of us know his family. Many of us know his parents. He made Aliyah as a child to Israel. He earned his law degree, served for 2 years in corporate law, and then he joined the Kollel Yeshivat Har Etzion, which we also know as Gush, received his certificate of teaching in Herzog's College, and he and his wife Ellie, and originally 4 children, now there are 5, I believe, took time out on Shlichut to be able to go to be the JLIC directors at Binghamton University in New York. But with the outbreak of the war, Ben went back. And so it is our pleasure to welcome Ben and to also hear from him, his story as one of us, and at the very same time as a person who has risen to this occasion. I also want to remind people who are on, there's a limited number of questions we may be able to manage, and if you'd like to put something in the Q&A that's entirely manageable, possible, please. We can't promise we can answer all the questions, but if there are questions, we will look forward to trying our best. Rabbi Ben Menorah, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you and sharing some thoughts and experiences. Just for a beginning, I want to say, everybody keeps talking about this, this is great that you went, and I'll share soon why I decided to go and what the experience has been like. But really, I think the unspoken and unsung hero of anything happening in my family is my wife, Ellie, who has been both managing the fort with the kids, 5 kids, Baruch Hashem, in Binghamton, and continuing running a huge student community in Binghamton, all along with me gone. I just dropped and did what I was trained to do, which is quite simple at the end of the day, because I've been doing it for 15 years. Ellie's been running anything, so she's really the true hero in anything happening in the Menorah family right now in Binghamton. So in terms of my story and my experience right now, and I'll touch upon hopefully some of the thoughts and the underlying themes and ideas that run with and that I've been thinking about over the past 45, 46, 47 days, whatever we're up to. After Mariv every night on base, I started a new minhag. As we finish Aleinu, I say, Hayom Chamisha ve'arba'im Yom Shehem, and I count for how many days at war we are and how many days towards this thing, hoping that will all end soon, but also recognizing that we can't really finish until we achieve the goals that we have. So we're this amount of days in, and I think back to many years ago. Many years ago, I was struggling with a few different things, and in a therapy session, one thing that I was talking with the therapist about was decision making. I knew I wasn't very good at decision making, and kind of jumped on different things at times. And how do I reach the right decision at different times in life? And one thing that he said to me, well, you got to think, what are your core values? What are the main things that you think about? And I took a lot of time out to really try to pin those down and write those down. And I sat with a piece of paper and tried to write, what is the number one thing that should be guiding me in life? And something in the back of my head was shouting, Oved Hashem, be an Oved Hashem. And it sounds very, very great and very idealistic, but I realized after a few minutes that I have no idea what that means. It's very hard to just throw out, okay, what should I have for breakfast? Well, I want to be an Oved Hashem. That doesn't really help. How do I make small decisions, big decisions, just by thinking, that's what I need to do? And when I tried to think, what are the main the main themes or the main ideas, the main values that would fit into being an Oved Hashem, I remembered something that my father always told me growing up, and back when I was a kid, and anybody that knows my father would recognize probably these themes and things that he talks about and shares and does, is Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, and Torah Yisrael, or more specifically, Am Yisrael be'Eretz Yisrael, al pi Torah Yisrael. These are the three values, or the three main things that he would always talk to me about growing up. I remember already as early as 6 or 7 years old, him teaching me these ideas, mentioning a lot of Rav Kook and similar sources of why these are the main things that we need to think about. We talked about this when we made Aliyah back in 1994, and I grew up with these things in mind. These are the things I got to be focusing on. These are the things I need to think about. These are our main ideals. And really, throughout life, this is something that I tried to think about. What are we doing now as a family? What am I doing career-wise that is really advancing or benefiting Am Yisrael, benefiting Eretz Yisrael, and benefiting Torah Yisrael, bringing these three together? And that's really, as a family, why we decided a few years ago to join Mizrahi's programs, to train for Shlichut, and really to go find a job somewhere out there. Binghamton, New York is kind of the middle of nowhere, and strengthen Jewish life, Jewish values there. Hopefully strengthen Zionism, connect people with Eretz Yisrael. So we're there for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, and Torah Yisrael, teaching Torah. That is one of the values, and that's how we found ourselves in Binghamton a few years ago. It's already been 2.5 years almost. But many years ago, as I finished as an Israeli, I finished high school, I went to yeshiva, and then it was time to draft to the army. So the army obviously is a big value. As a kid, I grew up in a Zionistic family saying, my father always talking with me and my father's friends that went to the army, and I would say, yeah, I'm going to be in Tzahal, and always my mother saying, if Mashiach doesn't come until then, and that's what I grew up knowing, yeah, one day I'll be a Chayal. So sure enough, a bunch of years ago, this is already 15 years ago, I joined the army, served for 3 years. And in the army, they always tell you, this is a lifelong thing. You're going to be in the reserves, you're going to be in the Miluim, and whenever anything happens, IDF relies on the reserves. There's only so many soldiers that can be there on a day-to-day basis. But when the big war breaks out, we're going to call in the reserve. So this happened in 2012, I think, in 2014. It happened in a few instances where they called up a lot of reserves. Never at this scale, at least not to the best of my memory. So Shmini Atzeret this year, last day of Simchas Torah, we're in Binghamton, New York. We're celebrating. We're at the end of Sukkot. Friday night, we have a wonderful meal with students over. Shabbos morning, on my way down to shul, my brother Yossi, who serves as an officer in the reserves, he catches me on the way to davening, and he says, Ben, my phone's been going off. It's been blowing up all night. I don't know what's happening. I checked. It looks like there's something happening in Israel. It wasn't very clear. I wasn't clear on what he was saying. It sounded like it's hard to say this, but just another pigua. I went on to teach the morning share and went on to davening. And during davening, a few students came up. We heard there's something going on. Is there any information? But nobody really knew. By Shmini Atzeret afternoon, we heard a little more details. We understood a little bit more that there's something big going on. As soon as Shabbos was out, and it's still second day Yontiv, as Israelis normally in Eretz Yisrael, in Chutz La'aretz, we follow the Psika of Harav Rimon, that he told us that we shouldn't do Melacha on the second day of Yontiv, but we said, there's a war, we have to understand what's happening, what the situation is. So we figured it out. I found out that all my friends, my unit has been called up already Shabbos morning to rejoin into the army, was called up. We understood a little bit more of the devastation of everything happening, and we understand that really this is a huge point in everything that's happening in Am Yisrael in the last who knows how long. This is a momentous time. And now we have this other thing that we have to deal with, because we're in Binghamton University. We have hundreds of students excited for Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is a huge day. And you could imagine, especially on a college campus, it's a huge opportunity to celebrate. It's an opportunity for us, the Jewish organizations, to really excite people about the Torah and about the holidays. It's a really exciting time. At the same time, we understand that there's something huge and terrible happening in Eretz Yisrael How do we mitigate that? How do we bring the things together? What are we supposed to do? So on Shmini Atzeret afternoon, speaking with the local the rabbis on campus, we decided, really the challenge at this time is understanding that despite all the disappointment or the station happening, we have to continue with the simcha of the Torah and continue to be excited. That's the real that on that Shabbos that was, and at the end of the day, I realized that was not the real challenge, because at that moment, what students didn't need was to be convinced to be happy and to celebrate despite everything happening in Eretz Yisrael. The real challenge was that they didn't realize what was happening in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't realize it was time to be sad. People didn't need to be convinced to start dancing. People had been drinking all afternoon already. Don't need to be told, hey, be happy. Hey, come dance. It's a sad time, but we're going to be happy anyways. The problem was, the challenge was convincing them that there was something really, really horrible, really challenging happening in Eretz Yisrael. And Simchas Torah morning, we had to switch the whole focus. When it came time for Hakafos, rather than say, we're gonna be happy and dance despite everything happening, the challenge was to convince them that now's not the time to be happy and not the time to dance. It's time to recognize the devastation of what's happening. For Hakafos, each Hakafah, we started with the Parak Tehillim and sang a slow song. And for the first Hakafah, the first two Hakafos, three Hakafos, I saw the puzzled look on people's faces. Even though I explained what was happening, people didn't realize it. They didn't comprehend what was happening. 4 Hakafas, 5 Hakafas, slowly I see it settling in. There's something big happening. By the time we reached Kiddush, I've never heard my house so quiet with 100, 150 students in the house and just murmurs, people talking. And I realized, I think this is the challenge, to have people, help them feel connected to what's happening in Eretz Yisrael. And fast forward to where we are today, because being back and forth right now, full disclosure, I'm in New York. I just flew in the other day for a short visit home with my family, which has been really exciting and really fun, and also challenging, because in my mindset right now, I'm a soldier. And like the Rambam says, you shouldn't be thinking about your home, as challenging as it is. You need to be focused on the great mission at hand. But right now, being focused and hearing both about what's happening, seeing what's happening within the American community and the Israeli communities, there have been two phases as I see it. The first phase has been the phase of what I think is called the Hitzchazkut, or the Chizuk, where really people have been stepping up for the occasion. In Chutz La'aretz, I've seen it where we saw it with the great rally in Washington. I've seen with all the tremendous opportunities that our students have been leading on campus, learning opportunities, davening opportunities, all the fundraising happening for units in the army, for the people that have been evacuated in the south and the north from their homes. There's been a tremendous chizuk hitchazkut in Am Yisrael. Driving along the highway, every single billboard has a sign on it that says Yachad Ninatzach, recognizing what Rav Doron mentioned earlier, that Haman arises when we're Yeshno Am Echad Mefuzarim Farad Bein Ha'amim. So we come together. That's how we win. The Biyachad Ninatzach. And there's been a tremendous chizuk also within the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. We see that in the army alone, the dozens of thousands of pairs of tefillin that have been giving out for chayalim that decided from now on they're going to put on tefillin every day. The dozens of thousands of tzitzis that they're wearing. I look around, my soldiers do not have yarmulkes on. A lot of them, there's very little that they do, but they all walk around wearing tzitzis now, because somebody said this is what's going to keep us strong. This is what's going to keep us safe. So the first phase of chizuk, I think we did tremendously well at as a nation. I think we've done very, very well at that. But now comes the second phase, which is the one that I struggle with very much, and that's where the Rifyon comes, where we start loosening our grip a little bit. We start losing focus, because it becomes hard. We're 45, 46, 47 days in. How do we keep the momentum? I know that where we are right now in the army, I feel people, I talk to people every day. I schmooze with people. I see people are struggling. Their businesses are falling apart. Their families are struggling. Their wife and kids are at home. Everybody's having it rough. In Eretz Yisrael, it's rough just to stay not seeing what's happening, and we're not achieving the great achievements militarily that we did the first few days, everything slowed down. It becomes a lot harder. And in Chutz La'aretz, it becomes harder also. We're not connected. We're not always there. We have the day-to-day life continuing. And the big challenge right now is to recognize that as the momentum drops, we need to think about the long term, how we're going to stay connected, both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz, connected to everything happening there. What is the long term plan for us to continue to be mechazik and stay connected to Medinat Yisrael? We know that there's going to be great challenges financially with how the economic system in Eretz Yisrael is going to bounce back from this. Does it mean that I'm going to now start supporting or blanking on the word here, speaking Hebrew for the last 45 days? Am I going to start investing in Israeli companies, even though it's not the best investment? Does it mean that I'm going to start planning all my trips to be to Eretz Yisrael? Whatever it is, how do I make sure in the long run I stay connected, that Berosh Ma'ayanai, that everything that I'm thinking about is continue to be with Am Yisrael together and focused on Eretz Yisrael, to keep that connection strong, to reignite that momentum and that flame. That's the big challenge that I see today that we need to be thinking about. Thank you very, very much for having me. Wishing everybody a lot of bracha ve'hatzlacha and besarot tovot.
Ben, just one quick question. What was your job in the IDF in Sahel? What is your position?
Thank you very much. So for many, many years, I was a staff sergeant. That was what I did from pretty much since 2009 until 2 years ago when I left on Shlichut. While I was in Shlichut, somebody filled my position. So now when I came back, I'm a kashar. A kashar is a radio man. So I'm connected with one of the officers of my unit, and I basically help all the information flow between him and all the different units under his command, and just run back and forth to make sure that things get done and things are happening. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Ben, thank you very, very much. Please stay safe. All of our tefillot are with all of the Chayalei Tzahal, and we pray that you will continue to provide for us the inspiration, and especially on campus, the inspiration that students need there as well. It is now my honor to introduce one more person who is joining us today. I'm introducing Michal Sandhaus. Michal is a mother of 4. She's an educator who specializes in curriculum development. And along with her husband, she had served as a shlicha for 7 years in Boca Raton, Florida. She currently lives in Shalavim. I met Michal several weeks ago on the first RCA Mizrahi mission in Israel when she took us around Ofakim, because Ofakim was one of those communities that's only about 15 miles away from the border that suffered terrible tragedy on October 7th when the Hamas terrorists invaded and attacked, killed more than 40 people in Ofakim, including Michal's brother Moshe Ochayon and also his son Eliad, who were fighting and defending the community and helped to save the rest of the community from further tragedy. Michal has become an important spokesperson for the state of Israel, for the community of Ofakim. And Michal, it is an honor for us to welcome you to our virtual mission today.
Thank you very much for having me. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. I know that it's a holiday. I know it's a special holiday, and it's impressive that we can all feel the bond between Jews all around the world. So I appreciate that. I want to tell you my own personal story about 2 very, very dear, unique people. My brother Moshe and his son Eliad. The 2 of them were the kind of people that made every day matter. The kind of people that touched every person that they've met, they've touched their hearts. The kind of people that changed so many lives. Moshe is my older brother, one of 7, the oldest grandchild, named after my grandfather Moshe, who died in Morocco. My grandfather died a month before my father's bar mitzvah. My father made Aliyah 2 years after, with a handicapped mother, an old grandmother, and 2 very young siblings. But he never let it stop. He never cried that life are difficult for him. He smiled. Every single day he smiled. and changed the world bit by bit. He became a high officer in the army. And during his job, he decided to institute the mechanical workshops for immigrants to enable them to study Hebrew, but also acquire profession. We walked in his footsteps. All of us are still walking in his footsteps. And Moshe took it a step forward. He decided to become an officer in the army just the same. But he was wounded in the army and had mild handicappy. But he said, that's not going to stop me to continue to contribute to the Jewish nation. And Moshe had a gift. He had a gift of Bina Yetera. He was able to look at a situation, identify the problem, and offer the best solution. And he decided as a young couple to move with his wife and one-year-old son to the city of Ofakim 24 years ago. Ofakim at that time is a difficult city. Some crime, low social economical back. And he never goes anywhere as a person that has a mission to change the world and he knows what's best for everyone. Not at all. He took all the teenagers from the city and sat with them and said, let's build our own leadership program. And you'll tell me what strengths you have that you can contribute to your community. And slowly, slowly, they're making extreme change. And he's building such programs around the country. And then the foundation of Mendel family hears about Moshe's doing. And they call him and say, come join us. Come study at the Mendel Institution. And he goes. And he drives every day from Ofakim to Yerushalayim. And after studying there, they're offering him to be the head of Mendel. And Mendel at the time were only working with educational leadership. And Moshe says, there are many educational leaderships in the Jewish nation. I want to be a social leader. I want to start the social leadership institution, academy. And the Mendel Foundation, thankfully, are willing to help him take his dream a step forward. And he institutes such a college in Haifa. And for 7 years, he drives daily from Ofakim to Haifa, over 2.5 hours each way. But he's not the kind of person to waste time. So he buys a car that waits at the Ofakim train station and a car that waits at the Haifa train station. And in between he works. But not for the job that pays him, but for the dreams that he wants to bring forward. And he institutes many chesed organizations, such as a generation and a half, Dor V'Chetzi, where teenagers sit with elders from the population and recognize that elders are not just weary old people, but kind people that have amazing life stories, and they learn to appreciate the elders more. And he then, with a group of very kind people, established the institute called Shacharit. And the purpose of that is to find a common ground between all Jews around the world and all citizens of Israel. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Bedouin, Druze, and many more. As I told you, Moshe was handicapped. But he decided that that will never stop him. And he goes back to a hobby that he liked, running marathons. But this time, he's running marathons, pushing wounded soldiers in wheelchairs. Because he believed that they should fulfill all their dreams. And due to the fact that they did so much for us, it sacrificed so much for every Jew around the world. It's his obligation to make their dreams come true. And he doesn't stop. And he becomes the head of the international organization 929 for Bible learning and accessibility to all Jews and non-Jews in all languages in all levels. And it doesn't stop there. This Sukkot, after seeing what happened to our nation, how separated we are, how we fight endlessly, and how it's weakening us, he decided to establish Sukkot Shel Shalom, Sukkot for peace. Now, you should say there are so many Torah lessons in so many Sukkot. What's the difference? As I said, it was one of a kind. He decided that 200 Sukkot will host Torah lessons or other lessons that will be created by two opposites from the society, two extreme opposites, a right wing and left wing, religious and non-religious, elders and young, women and men. And by sitting together, they will get to know each other before they teach the lesson. Now, if you think Moshe was a bit of a hyperactive, you should have met his son. Eliad was born premature. He had to be delivered a month ahead of time because he was big. He was born a month ahead of time, 10.1 pounds. Hashem knew what he was doing. He sent us a huge neshama, absolutely one of a kind. Eliad was born as the happiest kid I've ever met, and I've met many as an educator. He was full of joy. He looked at the world with a kind eye. He never saw flaws at anybody. At his bar mitzvah, he decided he wants to do his bar mitzvah in memory of Rabbi Aryeh Levine. And he studied about Rabbi Aryeh Levine, and he took us all to a day trip in Yerushalayim to Rabbi Aryeh's house and to other stations in his life. And he gave out a magnet at his bar mitzvah that says, a saying from Rabbi Aryeh Levine, "My kind Jew, I see only to your heart, and the soul that I see is bringing great joy to my life." Eliad decided at the age of 14 that he quits school. He attends only exams, and he's allocating 100% of his time to volunteer with handicapped kids. On Simchas Torah, like every year, they hosted 40 handicapped kids in their house, along with 40 chaperones. When they heard the rockets, they ran to offer aid, to open shelters. When they drove outside the house to get the keys for the shelters, they stumbled upon the terrorists. The terrorists were wearing IDF uniforms. They were waiting for the sirens to be heard. And when the sirens were heard and people ran out of their houses to the shelters, the terrorists massacred them. My brother and his son happened to be the first ones on the scene. My brother killed the first terrorist, and later on another one. Our family paid the dearest price of all. My brother, the wise man, had a clear bullet to his head. And Eliad, his son, this giant, he was called the Purple Giant because the Amutah that he volunteered for had purple shirts, and everybody in Israel and outside Israel knew him, the Purple Giant. The Purple Giant that was all heart had a clean bullet to his heart, and he fell down hugging his father. The bodies were found when the son was hugging the father. I can't tell you the depth of sorrow. I can't tell you what people in Israel are going through at this moment, but I can tell you one thing. If we would have asked them, they would have done the same thing all over again. Because they truly, truly believed that we are part of something bigger. We are part of the Jewish nation. No matter where we are or what the time era is, we are obligated to stand united to fight for one another, for each other, one for all and all for one. And by you enabling me to speak today to your community, I send in our family a hug saying, you will never walk alone. We are here with you. And I truly thank you for that.
Michal, thank you so much for the story of your brother and your nephew, the story of your family. Having been with you in Ofakim a few weeks ago and walked through the steps that they had taken and where the tragedies had occurred, I also learned of your strength, your sister-in-law's strength, and the strength of the people of Ofakim. May you continue to have that strength and to take forward the lessons of your brother, your nephew, all of the very brave people who continue to defend Medinat Yisrael, continue to settle Medinat Yisrael. We are with you, and you feel the hug you feel is the hug that we want to send and the support we want to give as well. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you all.
It is now my pleasure to welcome an old friend. I haven't actually spoken with Dr. Yechiel Leiter in a few years. The few probably has a 0 after it as well. And yet, Dr. Leiter is a person who is not only an academic, an Israeli historian of philosophy, a public policy analyst, a scholar at Jerusalem's Herzl Institute. He's also a person who's been an articulate spokesman on behalf of Medinat Yisrael. I remember his visits years ago to Chicago, which were regular, when he was speaking on behalf of the communities in Hebron. He served as the chief of staff to Benjamin Netanyahu when he was in the Ministry of Finance, and assistant to the former and late Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Yechiel was born in Scranton. Tragically, just a couple of weeks ago, his son Moshe Yedidia was killed in battle. And on behalf of our congregation and our community, Dr. Leiter, we extend to you our condolences for Moshe's loss. And also our thanks that you're joining us today, despite the tragedy that happened just a few days ago. Dr. Leiter, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having me, Rabbi Matanki. I'm going to begin with an apology. I'm standing in the hospital ward here in Shaare Zedek. You can probably see the sign in back of me. It's the surgery ward, general surgery department. Two of the soldiers who were seriously injured when Moshe was killed are here. One of them is Elisha Medad, the son of the Rosh Yeshiva of Har Zion, Rav Yaakov Medad. Elisha and Moshe were very close. They chose to do Miluim together and insisted on being together in the command center going to war. The second, Elisha lost both legs. And his life was in balance for a while, but Baruch Hashem, he's going to, by all indications, going to be able to recover. Actually, they moved him out of bed to a wheelchair for the first time. In the room right next to him is Amos Lapidot, who comes from the other spectrum of Israeli society. He lost one leg, and they were able to hold on to the second. His father and I, we discovered, did medic training in the Army 41 years ago. Small world. Let me begin by sending a huge hug to Rabbi Doron, Rabbi Doron. He's a ongoing hero and setting an example for all of us for what Emunah is. Not something theoretical and not something for a safer, but something that he's living 24/7 and setting an example for everyone, for all of us. Chazak ve'ematzi, we should, B'ezrat Hashem, be zochel to hear good news soon from Daniel and from the rest of the captives being held hostage. I could speak for many hours on end about my Bechor, Moshe Didia. He was the father of 6. He spent 15 years in special ops. It's called the Shaldag unit. It's the equivalent of the American Delta Force. And he decided at the age of 33 to go to med school. That was after he was in charge of security for the Israeli delegation to the Philippines in 2014, rescue mission that Israel provided to the Philippines. And when he saw the field operations of the MDs there, he decided that he wanted to go in that direction as well. So although he was offered to be the commander of Shaldag, he left the unit after 15 years. Many special ops that he are still classified. The kind of operations that you have to visit overseas, but without a passport, if you get what I mean. And the operations are still classified. We heard a bit about them during the Shiva. He went to med school, and at the same time, he continued to do some 80, 90 days of Miluim a year. And he also went to battalion commander's school during the Miluim. So it ended up being in the neighborhood of 120, 130 days a year while he was doing med school. And in his last year, he decided he was asked to take charge of a program integrating the Haredi community into an intelligence unit called Shmona Matayim, for those who are familiar with it, 8200, which is probably the largest unit in all of the IDF, which is digital intelligence, cyber, etc. And when I had a father-son talk before Rosh Hashanah this year, and I tried to convince him to let it go, he said to me, "Abba, this is everything you taught me. How can I let it go? It's going to change the face of Israeli society." And indeed, he took a program that was floundering and laid the basis for a stellar success. The Minister of Defense called me, the Chief of the Air Force, all spoke about the success of the program and how much they value it and see it as the future for Tzahal, and how important it is for Tzahal. So I could go on and talking about Moshe, but in the next 3 or 4 minutes, I'd like to just emphasize something that a few points that I think are imperative. I was told by a number of Rabbanim and politicians and leaders, during the Shiva, they said, Yechiel, you have a microphone now. You can say anything you want. There's the halo of the morning of the grieving father. So I'm extending that privilege I have with the microphone to say a few things that will probably disturb many people, but so be it. We need to be disturbed sometimes in our lives to get shaken up a little bit. I think it's very important, and I will not miss an opportunity to say it, that we don't just breeze through these events as just some more events happening in our lives. We need to be shaken out of our regular schedules, shaken out of our lethargy. And I think that this is a time, this is a moment which is a foundational one for our people. I think in many respects, it's the refounding of the state. And I'll explain. There are things that we've become used to that will no longer be true when this war is over. Of course, everybody knows that we're not going to continue to adhere to a concept that terrorists and evil can be somehow mollified or assuaged. We live in an age of postmodernism on steroids. We used to live in an age, we were all brought up in an age of moral relativism, where there was confusion between that which is good and that which is evil. But that's changed. Now we live in an age where evil is defined as good, and good is defined as evil. And we are at war with that on an ideational level, not just the terror organization. We're at war with the notion that there's no such thing as objective good. That's our job in this world. That's the job of the Jewish people. That's what we're here to do. It's more than another daf in the Daf Yomi. It's more than another shir in Pashat Shavua. It's much broader. It's much greater. It's much more ubiquitous. And we have to bear that in mind. And that necessitates a number of conclusions. Excuse the noise. There's some noise here in the hallway in the hospital. One of the first conclusions we must draw is to leave the complacency of accepting the idea that there are Jewish communities around the world as a norm. Excuse me for being so bold, but we expect now, we should endeavor to facilitate a massive aliyah, not a trickle of a few tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands and millions. The idea of a complacent galut is over. It's been over, but we haven't really recognized it. And now it's time to employ all of our efforts, deploy all of our forces into a radical alteration of that complacency. The place for the Jewish people is in the land of Israel. This is not something which is, it's as central to the Jewish experience as Shabbat is. And that's something which unfortunately we haven't taught and experienced. And I take the liberty in the name of my son Moshe, because I know that's what he would have wanted me to share. The second conclusion that we have to, I think, begin to appreciate is the complacent notion that a very large section of people who are true to Torah, the complacency in which the IDF is viewed has to change. This is a moment of reckoning. There's no precedent. There's no precedent from the time of Avraham Avinu took his first steps in the land of Israel to the notion that only some people give their lives in battle and others don't. Yehoshua, who conquered Eretz Yisrael, was censored because he didn't make time for Torah at night, writes Rav Zevin. But certainly everybody during the course of the day has to fight. There's time for Tillim. Everybody has to say Tillim. But if you have the opportunity to hold a gun in your hand when people are trying to kill you, you don't say Tillim. You take the gun and you use it. So this has to change as well, and I believe it's changing. We just have to be part of the change. We have to excel in the change. We have to emphasize the change. We have to teach the change. We have to endeavor to make it happen, to be partners with Hashem in the phenomenon which is growing. And the third, and this is my own personal final conclusion, is that the understanding of what Am HaNivchar is. How much money has been spent on Holocaust education in the past 75 years? Does it reach billions? Probably. Certainly hundreds of millions. And yet, in 4,500 out of 4,505 campuses in the United States, anti-Semitism is palpable, rampant. Things are being said by politicians, which nobody could have dreamt of a few years ago. So this idea of teaching appreciation for where the Jewish people are by a common denominator called Holocaust education has failed miserably. And it's time to accept the notion that we are not a normative people, that the state of Israel will never be normative. You know, Herzl understood more than anyone at the time that the Juden problem wouldn't go away. It could never be normalized without a state. His mistake was that once we had a state, we'd become normal. We are an abnormal people. That is our position. That is our job. That is our chore. That is our task. But we have to determine among ourselves what that abnormality is and how we express it. And I think that now it's becoming clear. The fight against evil, the fight against objective evil. There's a lot of comparisons being made to Nazis. No. Please appreciate. These people are worse than Nazis. The Nazis tried to cover what they did. They were embarrassed at some point when it was exposed. These people are parading it on digital media, what they did. Slaughter, murder, rape, decapitating people, mutilating babies. I was asked today by the officer in charge of grieving families if I could please visit a family in Rishon LeZion whose daughter, they only had one daughter, and she was a young sergeant who was killed, but she wasn't just killed. There's nothing left. They have nothing left of the body. Nothing left. You're talking about a reincarnation of the ashes of Auschwitz. There was nothing left. And these are the people who are being applauded by millions and millions of people around the world. That's their way of saying that there's something special about the Jewish people. Now let us pick up that charge and determine for ourselves what more we have to say, what more we have to offer, what more we have to teach. But first, we have to physically eradicate evil. I'll just close with a sentence that I saw the week before Moshe was killed. I took Rav Soloveitchik's Sefer Amudo Shel Olam, which is a Sefer on Avram Avinu. Rav Soloveitchik refers to Amalek. And you know, Rav Soloveitchik certainly could not be accused of being extreme. He was a very moderate posek, a very moderate leader. But he determines what Amalek is, defines Amalek. Amalek, he says, is not a people or a race or a nation. We make the mistake of thinking so. Amalek is an idea. And what's the idea? The idea is organized evil. It's a free translation of mine. Organized evil with the intent of spreading human suffering. An amazing definition. Organized evil with the intent of spreading human suffering. And that can only be defeated through force. We will continue. I mourn for my son on a personal level, but on a national level, I am proud that he joined the ranks of Rabbi Akiva and Chaverav. He knew what he was fighting for. He always said, Abba, when I go into battle, I have 60, 70 kilograms on my back. And you know how I make it lighter? I add something. I add my grandparents. I add my sabim and my savtot. And when I add the generations on my shoulders, and I know that I'm going into battle with them, the burden becomes lighter. Lighter, fun, right? But lighter in terms of weight. And so, Bezrat Hashem, we will move forward, and hopefully Jews, wherever they are, will understand that this is a formative moment in Jewish history. They can choose either to be part of it, to be active participants, or to be observers. That's the opportunity that we have now, to be active participants in writing and being arbiters of Jewish history, and not just observers, but active participants. So thank you for the opportunity to address this auspicious meeting. And I wish you and your congregants, and of course, Mizrahi Olami, and all the important work that Rav Doron and my distinguished Mechutin, Hillel Van Leeuwen, does together with you, the ultimate success. Shalom.
Yechiel, thank you so very much. And again, please extend our condolences to your entire family and also obviously to Moshe Yedidia's mother, Chani, who so many of us remember for so many years. The Shema should have an aliyah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much.
Before we conclude this extraordinary event, I want to thank some people and then end with the tefillah. I want to thank Rabbis Liebtag and Goldstein, who helped me coordinate this event. In fact, it was Rabbi Liebtag's idea to try to create this, and thank you very much for that. I want to thank Mizrahi, World Mizrahi, Rabbi Perez, who we heard from earlier, and also Hillel Van Leeuwen, another former Chicagoan who works with Mizrahi and helped put together all of the speakers. This is a day of Thanksgiving, and the Thanksgiving we should be giving are for all of those who continue to make sure that our country, our beloved state, is safe and our beloved state is defended, even if they had to give it with their lives. And now I'd like to conclude with a special tefillah that I was given by Rav Perez when I was in his offices. It was a tefillah that was first written by Rav Shlomo Goren and then adapted by his son, Rami Goren, a tefillah for peace and also for those who've been kidnapped. Misha berach avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yakov, Moshe Aaron David u'Shlomo, u'yivarech v'yishmor v'yatzil et banenu hayikarim chayalei tzva hagana liYisrael u'shar halochamim leman bitachon ha'am va'aretz ve'ezrachim zkenim u'tzirim nashim gvarim v'taf hanimtzaim b'tzara u'b'tzuka u'netunim b'mishisa v'sakana b'shevi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Alehem L'kaimam U'Lechazkam U'Achayot Ruchav V'Tikvatam Lahasgir Mimizger Nafsham L'Otziam Mitzara L'Rvacha U'Mishibud L'Gulam V'Laptzuim Shebahem Yishlach Hashem Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh U'Refuat HaGuf V'Yizku Kulam Lashuv B'Mehera L'Veitam U'L'Artzam B'Ri'im U'Shlemim L'Chaim U'L'Shalom V'yikayem behem divrei hakatuv lachavosh l'nishberei lev likro l'shvuyim dror v'nomar amen. We as a shul will continue to do things to send the hugs and send our support to Medinat Yisrael. We thank you for your attention today, and please God, we will see the Yeshua Mehera b'Yameinu. Amen. Thank you for joining us.